Welcome back, Tiger fans, to Rockin' Radio's football podcast. I'm Nate Edwards. That's Parker Gillam, and this is Before the Box Score. We're just sitting and waiting for this bowl game to happen. That's what we're doing. Now, on the other side, the coaches, they're keeping together their roster. They're re-recruiting their roster. They're recruiting a new roster. They're recruiting the portal. They're trying to sign their high school draftees that are coming in. They're trying to replace the coaches that they've lost. They're trying to do all sorts of stuff when this has typically been, a more quiet part of the season. And oh, by the way, you're playing for a bowl game. So we're doing great. We're doing fine on our end. It's hell for the coaches on the other side. But Parker, how are you doing this fine evening?
Doing good. Just, saw the schedule breakdown, which we'll touch on later, which is very intriguing and will create some way too early hype for next season, I'm sure. But, transfer portal has continued to be fun to keep up with. And especially for Mizzou this past week, it has been a very, very nice.
It really has been. And we will get to that. But the number one rule of podcasting, well, I guess the number one rule of podcasting is that no matter when you are podcasting, right outside your window is someone with a leaf blower at any time of the day, at any portion of the country. That's rule number one. Rule number two is that the second that you get done recording is when the breaking news happens. And of course, lo and behold, that's what happened to us last week, because we decided to, and I looked at my phone and saw, oh, by the way, Cody Schrader won the Burlsworth Trophy, which of course that's awesome. The Burlsworth Trophy, in case you are unaware, goes to the greatest football player that started off as a walk-on. So they're not currently, they could be on a scholarship. Maybe they're not on a scholarship, but that's how they started their career. It was first awarded in 2010. It is an award in honor of Brandon Burlsworth, who was a walk-on for Arkansas. Yes, it's okay that he played for the Arkansas Razorbacks, but he was killed in a car accident 11 days after being selected by the Colts in the 1999 NFL draft. And so there was a foundation that was set up in his name. And, of course, it honors the best player that started their career as a walk-on. Cody Schrader won. And this is an award that I feel like doesn't get lumped in frequently with, like, the Doak Walker, the Davey O'Brien, the Dick Butkus, whatever. But the guys who win this award, Parker, they're no slouches. And a lot of these names kind of surprise me. But, like, if you win this award, you are a legit football player, including last year's winner, which was Stetson Bennett.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of, looking through kind of the other list of names, you got Baker back-to-back in 15 and 16, Luke Falk, Hunter Renfrow, go back further, Justin Hardy. And the finalists are a long list of kind of some big-time names. A lot of NFL guys in here. Obviously, Burlsworth Trophy has a great backstory to it. That definitely, I believe ESPN did, or at least SEC Network did a sort of 30 for 30 short on it. Definitely worth checking out as well if you don't know the full story. But yeah, incredible award. Cody beat out James Carpenter of James Madison, who helped kind of spearhead one of, if not the best, at least statistical defensive line in the country this year. And then Drake Stoops, who had a breakout campaign for Oklahoma at wide receiver this year. So again, Cody was going to win this award, but to beat out those two high caliber players, a pretty big deal. And yeah, he joins an exclusive club. It's a fairly young award, so he's one of just a handful of the guys that have won this so far. A lot of them went on to have moderate to good success in the NFL. Looking at guys like Renfrow and Baker Mayfield, Hardy, at least kind of had a couple years as starter out at wide receiver. So yeah, it's a great award. I would imagine for Cody, and kind of knowing him as a person, it's one that would mean a lot to him, if not more so than probably any of the other honors that he's gotten, just because I think the biggest thing for me when you look at this list of players, every single guy on here has a backstory that rivals the best in college football, because they've really had to earn their way up. Sometimes it was at multiple schools like Cody, like Baker, who started at Tech, went on to Oklahoma. So it's a great trophy that represents a lot of the best of college football in terms of working your way up when people doubted you, or maybe you weren't given the same opportunities, and then were able to kind of make a name for yourself. So big time for Cody. I would imagine he was thrilled when he heard that, and carrying on. And he's also, I think, this list of names, they carry on a legacy of just great people in football that have won this award as well. So he definitely continues that.
Yeah, and he even got to work in a dig against Arkansas in his acceptance speech, saying that he was surprised that he was let back in the state after running all over them on Black Friday of this year. So, hey, it was good stuff. Now, did he win the Doak Walker? No, he did not. Did Tyron Hopper win the Butkus? No, they did not. But that is this piece of hardware that goes to Missouri, a national award that goes to a Missouri player, which is a big deal. And then, the last show we talked about how Missouri was getting recognized on the national level, and that stuff continues to do so, including with the Burlsworth Trophy and, of course, with the All-American Awards. at this moment, I mean, Cody Schrader is situated to be a first-team All-American almost at a consensus level. We're still waiting for a couple of more publications to make their decisions. But Cody's been a first-team All-American on at least 3 of the lists. Luther Burden's looking to be pretty much a solid second-team All-American once things are all said and done. So is Chris Abrams-Drain. Javon Foster's been on a couple of 2s, a 3 here and there, so it's kind of up in the air on where he's going to end up. But Parker, we talked before, like, you know, if your team does well, like, you get recognized. And even as Missouri, you know, we still think like, you know, they're probably not going to really pull our guys out. But even on a 10-2 team that lost to LSU and the best player in the country and lost to Georgia, which is one of the best teams in the country, even with that, your star running back, right, your star receiver, an NFL tackle or an NFL caliber tackle, and one of the best corners in the country are legitimately being recognized as All-Americans. And, you know, we went last time you had last show for the last time you had this many guys recognized on this level, and it was a magical season. So we'll see if it ends up being consensus, but whether it is or not, this is great for them, and it's great for the program.
Yeah. I mean, big time for sure. I think, I mean, when you look at Cody to kind of start with, I mean, yeah, I see no reason he shouldn't be on that first team every time. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to make an argument to me for, you know, either Audric Estime or Marion Hampton to be over him. Blake Corum just didn't have the production this season. He might be potentially the most talented back in the country, but he didn't have that production this year. So, I mean, Cody and Ollie, probably the easiest 2 picks for those writers and voters to kind of pencil in, and kind of a very exclusive club up there. But yeah, I was surprised. I mean, Javon making 3rd team, I thought was great recognition. I was somewhat, you know, pleasantly surprised to see that up there. I really think you could have at least made a pretty strong argument to put Chris Abrams-Drain up there. I think the lack of teams targeting him probably held him back a lot, which is through no fault of his own, obviously. Cooper DeJean, I think you got to give it to just because of how all around of a player he was, and he played on potentially, I mean, in terms of how they carried that team, the best defense in the country. I can make an argument, sliding Kool-Aid to 2nd team, obviously a great player in his own right and an even better name, but Chris Abrams-Drain could have seen 1st team. But yeah, Javon on 3rd was big time, and then Luther on 2nd team. It makes sense. It would be tough for him to crack. I mean, that Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, Romo Dunze, I'd be hard pressed to see these past 5-10 years if we've ever had a group of just top tier receivers, like the top 3 just being that separated from the rest. I think talent wise, in terms of actual player, Luther's right in the level with all 3 of them. In terms of the production this year and kind of how they flashed in big games, I think you saw Luther, you know, have his moments early in the season, then his teams kind of focused more in on him. You saw guys like Theo Weiss, Norfleet, Wookie Cooper kind of step up, and he took a slight step back. That probably played a little bit against his favor, but overall recognition, again, as we kind of, the theme of the past 2 weeks is huge. I think yet another example of people having taken notice of the success of this, you know, this team. And another thing I always like to point out with award season is, again, this is stuff that you sell to recruits and you sell to transfer portal, you know, goers, that we've had these guys in APL American teams. You can be next up right on this list.
And, you know, Luther, he was great, but he was way more productive at the beginning of the season. And whether he just, you know, took too many hits, got tired, or defenses started adjusting to him, he just did not have the production on the back half as he did in the first, like you said. But like, also he didn't seem to care. You know, he was happy that we were winning, and he was still a threat every time that they threw him the ball. He was always going to be a threat. So it's certainly respected by opposing defensive coordinators, and it's good to see that even with a production drop, people still view him as one of the best receivers in the country. So that,
and he'll still be one of the top receivers off the board next year, regardless. Absolutely. So he's not stressing, I would imagine. I mean,
God, he's already on, you know, Heisman watch lists for next year, which, okay.
I think that's next year, though. I would imagine it's to lose. I mean, I can't think off the top of my head another receiver returning that's going to be on his level. So Tetero McMillan may be the only name I'd throw out there, but that's nitpicking a little bit.
I mean, someone's going to have to make a huge leap, and it happens. Yeah. But yeah, at this point, from a known quantity standpoint, absolutely keep an eye on him. So we'll see how that goes. But again, all American lists keep coming out this week. We'll see where everyone ends up and whether everyone becomes a consensus. But yeah, that's pretty cool to be where we are. We did talk about the portal. Obviously, we are in prime portal season really interesting names that have been dropping recently. And I think you're going to start seeing more as these bowl games complete, as the season officially winds down for some of these teams. You're going to see starter level guys who are done with their practices and done with their bowl start to enter the portal. So it's not going to be done for quite some time, but names keep entering in. And we had a couple more from Mizzou also enter into the portal recently. The first one that went in was Demarion Houston. He goes by the nickname of Peanut, but he was a wide receiver that, I mean, if you remember seeing him, you saw him in the bowl game last year against Wake Forest. He had caught like 5 or 6 passes. And you're like, where has this guy been all year? And then he got hurt right in fall camp, right around August, and then missed basically the entire year rehabbing that injury. So he went into the portal. And then earlier today is Wednesday the 13th, Mekhi Lee, the offensive lineman, entered into the portal. Now, he was a depth piece through and through. He was tackle size. He came out of JUCO, just could not get in front of Marcellus Johnson, Javon Foster, Armand Mimbu, even Mitchell Walters. Like, he was just kind of a depth piece that provided a body. And so he's going to go into the portal as well. So again, Parker, we talk about who goes into the portal. We talk about what leaves from your team. And time again, you are going to get a surprise. You are going to get a surprise starter here or there. But for Mizzou, at least certainly in the past 2 years, they have really locked up their starters, and all we've really lost is backup guys. How do you feel?
Yeah. I mean, I harped on the culture enough last week, so I'll refrain from doing that again. But I do, again, think that is a large part of keeping these starters back. And again, building towards, I think the returning group and the guys that are opting to stay are realizing that 2024 can be very special for this team. But yeah, I think, I mean, in looking at them both, I think, Mekhi Lee was just the guy that went from, junior college to the SEC level, wanted to see if he could make a breakthrough. Didn't work out. Maybe he tries to go down group of 5 level or lower power 5 level and see if he can make a name for himself there. That makes sense. Peanut, I think, on the other hand, was just bad timing. You saw him flash a little bit last year. You point out the Wake Forest game, obviously, but he's a guy that even in a lot of practices and coaching staff spoke highly of in terms of his playmaking, how fast he was. Just saying he's a guy that we would love to get the ball in his hands and let him work. I just think the timing of that injury and then bringing in Theo Weiss and then Mookie Cooper kind of coming in his own, Mekhi Miller coming in his own at the end of last season.
Johnson, I think the speedster.
Another one. Yeah, took his role almost of sorts. So it was just too much depth in that receiver room. I think Peanut saw that probably towards the tail end of the season and more than likely made that decision earlier rather than recently. And it's unfortunate. I think someone's going to be getting a very talented, receiver, whoever does. And he can certainly have a chance to take off at his next place. But with how next season's receiving core kind of projects, I couldn't see him getting many, he wouldn't start a game. I couldn't see him getting many significant snaps. So it all makes sense. And I think, all the names so far have been guys you're like, yeah, I can see why they're leaving. Not the worst loss in the world. Wish you the best of luck.
Yeah. I mean, again, let's just quickly, assuming everybody comes back, let's just run through the 2024 receiving core real quick, okay? Number 1, Theo Weiss. I know that his dad said nothing has been officially. I understand it, but let's assume he comes back. Theo Weiss. Mookie Cooper, also unclear if he's going to come back. He said he's got 2 years to play 1 if he wants to. Okay, but let's just assume he comes back too. Luther Burden. Yeah, all right. Marquise Johnson. Okay. Josh Manning, Mekhi Miller, Daniel Blood, Jamarian Wayne, possibly if he's still a receiver. And then you add the president, James Madison. Yeah, there's no snaps for Peanut. Yeah. And even if Theo left, even if Mookie left, I mean, your backups there are Marquise Johnson, Josh Manning, Daniel Blood, all of whom have seen the field. Like it didn't make any sense. And like you said, it's a deep receiving room. They're only adding more guys. It makes perfect sense. And yeah, best of luck to him.
Yeah, and it's almost, I would imagine the coaching staff talked a little bit this season about wanting, because you saw Manning and Blood out in the field, even sometimes in somewhat big scenarios late in games, and they were really wanting to get them, A, some high-level experience, but B, just to kind of see what they could do with the ball in their hands, because you got the sense that in practices the staff was like, these guys are the future, but we want to get them really ready right now. So I think they were going to pass Peanut in that, experience probably doesn't matter as much in this scenario. Those two are talented enough to they were to pass them. And yeah, I mean, you would be 3. You're looking at, being a strong 2 deep at receiver next year. And that's minus getting, they might not be targeting a receiver at all in the portal, but that's thinking about not even getting one in the portal, which who knows, they might still land one. So again, it's deep. It's a great problem to have, though. That is for sure.
It is. I didn't even count Chance Looper, who's missed the past couple of years with an illness, who apparently is going to be running track this spring. So maybe he's back to playing sports again. I don't know, but it's just there's too many guys. So it's fine. And at this point, Peanut's getting into his last years. He doesn't really want to just roll the dice and hope for the best. So I get it. And they're gonna get a fast guy, and I'm sure he could definitely make a splash somewhere, but it's not going to be here. So those are the losses so far. Of course, by the next time we record, there'll be some more. That's just kind of how this thing goes, but that's okay. Because guess what? You got to make room for incoming guys, and boy, did we get some incoming guys.
Yep.
Hot dang. So let's start at the start, right? I know BK and I have talked about this. Parker, I don't know if you've ever waxed poetic on this concept, but we have been a strong believer in that if you miss out on a guy coming out of high school, that's okay. That's okay. Wish him well, stay in contact, but don't think that the recruiting of that guy is over. And lo and behold, Mizzou has done a pretty good job of staying in the good graces of Missouri recruits, kids who come from St. Louis, Kansas City, just the great state of Missouri, and have gone other places. And apparently they stay in touch enough to go, hey, if you want some more snaps on a team that wins 10 games, why don't you come on back to Como? And at least one person said, yes, sir, I would like to give that a try. His name is Toriano Pride. He was a cornerback. He is a 4-star cornerback. He's one of the best corners in his recruiting class, mind you. He is from St. Louis. Imagine that. Now, he's one of those kids who was, born in St. Louis and then played at East St. Louis in Illinois, because that's the cool thing to do. And East St. Louis is a great high school football program. But Toriano went to Clemson. He played there in 2022 and 2023. Saw 14 games in the 22 season, 12 games in the 23 season. But you saw the snaps start to dwindle, because his freshman year, 312 snaps on defense. This upcoming year, 142. Clemson's not winning as many games. Dabo's kind of being all internal, and I don't know what I'm doing anymore. The game's passing me by, talking about respecting the troops, but give me a break. And I'm a good Christian man who shouldn't be fired. I don't know. That was a weird rant. But anyway, Toriano decided to come back to Columbia. And wouldn't you know it, Missouri's got 2 cornerback slots that they're looking to fill. So, Parker, it's a position of need from a local kid who's a 4-star, highly rated. What more can you ask for at this point?
I mean, you stole words right out of my mouth. I mean, that's pretty much you check one of, if probably not the biggest positional need over the offseason, but one of them you checked off very early in the process with one of the top names out there that you could have gotten. And so, I mean, huge win, obviously. I think, with Pride, he flashed in terms of had a couple of big plays, some big turnovers in games, but never was consistent enough at Clemson, I think, to earn true starter snaps. I also heard just no true sourcing, just kind of some friends I have at Clemson saying that he was a little bit undersized. That's a reason that Dabo on that defense didn't love him as well. He's at 5'11", 190 pounds. You can liken him to Chris Abrams-Drain, who was 5'11", 178 pounds, at least listed on the Missouri site. So maybe Pride looked at how Abrams-Drain developed with a similar stature over his years at Missouri and said, hey, I can do that, and I can turn into a first-round draft pick just like KAD did. There's potential there for it. I think also just playing closer to home, playing alongside some former teammates and alumni of the same high school. So, yeah, huge win. I think you get a guy that's experienced playing in a high caliber, championship caliber program like Clemson is, although they faded these past couple of years. They're still, they practice, they train at that level still. He's used to that. He's used to playing in big games, because Clemson still does, regardless of if they're winning 8 games or 12. So you get tons of big game experience in a guy that can step in and be a day one starter at a position that you desperately needed. Obviously, Ennis Rakestraw still unsure on if he'll go to the draft yet. I'm thinking he will at this point, but again,
didn't he accept a Senior Bowl invite?
Yeah, okay, so that pretty much confirms it. So you're looking at him, and then if you don't land another DB, more than likely Drayden Norwood starting opposite Toriano Pride as your two DBs next year. A really solid unit because coaching staff talked a lot this year about just how much they were really liking what Norwood was doing in practice, and then kind of in a backup role to Rakestraw and KD. They were loving what he was doing. So I can see, you look at losing Rakestraw and KD and you say, man, cornerback's going to take a huge step back. It's going to be a position of struggle next year. I'd hold your horses on that front. I think Pride can step in and be not going to be the same level as Rakestraw and KD. You're going to be hard pressed to find that at any team in the country, but I think Norwood and Pride can be a great duo for next year.
Yeah. Rakestraw accepted a Senior Bowl invite, so he gone. But yeah, I mean, when Rake was injured, they went to Norwood. That was their guys. Their top three, as far as snaps earned in order, was Chris Abrams-Drain with 758, Ennis Rakestraw with 466, and then Drain and Norwood with 327. Now that's not it. Like, Marcus Clark had 167. He's one of the few guys who had an interception this year. He had two of them. Nick DeLoche, Shamar McNeil. Obviously, they were redshirting this year. Shamar got on the field for 16 snaps, but you need another corner, and whether that's the three that I just mentioned or you portal one in, you got to get at least another one, just to be sure. You can't be going into a season with two corners and then a bunch of unknown past that. So, as far as production goes, you make a really good point about his size. I had not heard that Dabo and friends thought he was undersized, which is crazy. I grew up when corners were 5'9", 5'10".
Yeah.
And now it's if you're not 6'1", if you're not this tall, you can't ride the ride. I'm like, what? 6'1" corner is insane to me. But, receivers are running around at 6'4", 6'5", so I guess it makes sense. But point being, you can find success. There are different ways that you can play. And for a long time, shorter guys have found success at corner. To your point, though, as far as there's going to be some drop off. You're absolutely right. There is going to be drop off. You don't just find a SEC starting level corner sitting in the portal because they're looking to go somewhere. Those guys are typically locked down. You're absolutely right. I can't say for how he plays or the scheme he plays or anything like that. I can talk about stats on a page. And when I looked at what he had done, and trying to compare it and find some stuff that is going to look to, he is not going to be Chris Abrams-Drain. He's not that far off from Ennis Rakestraw. Of course, the difference is that Rake played in 9 games and, Pride played in 12, but okay. So when thrown against, Pride had 18 passes go to hit the guy that he was covering. He allowed a completion on 10 of them. So that's a 55% completion rating. Gave up 145 yards, a touchdown, had no interceptions. He successfully broke up the pass 22% of the time, and quarterbacks had a rating of 68.8 when they threw against Rakestraw. Okay, I know that's a lot of numbers, but here's what when they threw to Pride. Now, when they threw to Rakestraw this year, who again was injured for most of the time, Rakestraw had 23 passes go to his guy, only 13 completions, so that's 56% completion rating. That's really close to Pride, within 1%. 178 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Rake broke up a pass 13% of the time, and then quarterbacks had a 73.4 QBR when thrown against Rake. So a lot of that is really close to what Pride did over more games, but a smaller sample set. And just in case you're wondering, Chris Abrams-Drain allowed a 36% completion rating when thrown against, gave up 246 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, broke up passes almost 30% of the time, and had quarterbacks had a 12 QBR when throwing against Chris Abrams-Drain. So he ain't CAD. He's a little bit more like Rake, and we like Rake. So I don't know how he's going to do in the run. I don't know how handsy he's going to be. I don't know how he's going to take to the Blake Baker system, or how Al Bogue is going to coach him up. Any of that, I don't know. But from stats on the page, he seems a lot like Rake. And frankly, if that's what you're getting out of the portal, that's a huge win.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it's for him stepping in, I'm interested to see, you pointed out the Blake Baker system and how he gets used to that. Because, Baker does coach Clemson is generally an aggressive defense too, yes, but not so much with their secondaries, as much with their front seven. Baker, he'll bring guys all over. He's shown the tendency to do that. Generally not DBs, but you've seen Katie and Rakestraw coming on blitzes a handful of times at least. So, we'll see how Pride kind of does in that front. I agree. We don't know a ton as of right now on kind of how he is on the run defense front. And, just with such a smaller sample size, true just open field tackling. So a lot to figure out. I think another benefit is just, with such an early commitment in the portal cycle is he's going to have the time. I'm unsure of the exact calendar of when he's truly allowed to get on campus, get in contact, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But I would imagine he's benefiting from at least knowing where he's going to be early, being able to ideally watch Mizzou film from last year, being able to potentially talk to some of the coaches, get an idea. So he's at least fairly ahead in the process compared to a guy that's committing, at the end of, this opening transfer portal window or the secondary one in late spring. So there's also that to consider.
Yeah. So that was the big one. That was the first big one. And it's funny because he entered the transfer portal with like the express intent of do not contact me. I don't want coaches I'm going in the portal, but I'm coming right back out because he knew exactly where he was going to go, which is
I believe the biggest thing he said, I think in an interview why he entered the portal, he was like, I just want to look for a place where I have opportunity. And he certainly has that here.
You got it here, man. Yeah, for sure. So then we got some more good news. Another transfer in. This one's a little bit different. Now, we talked last show about running backs that we wanted. I know we talked about Trevor Etienne. I talked about Ashton Janty, who said he was going in the portal, and then he didn't go in the portal, and then he was committed to Boise, all that. So you teased me, sir. You teased me. You made me sad. But that's okay. You go play for Boise because Missouri's got another guy. And I was asked, actually, it's funny, on the Toriano Pride piece that I did the recruiting reset on, somebody in there asked me, what running backs do I want? And I had mentioned, I really like Marcus Carroll, which I'm not sure if I said it in the other show. I don't listen to myself talk ever, but I liked Marcus Carroll because he's Cody Schrader sized and he ran a similar kind of scheme. And boy, wow, less than a week later, ta-da, here he is. So Marcus Carroll, if you're looking for a Cody Schrader comparison, this guy's pretty close. He's an inch taller. He's 4 pounds lighter, but he ran for over 1,300 yards. He was overlooked coming out of high school. Been kind of quiet for the past couple of years, but had his breakout. And man, you want to talk about the kind of guy that the portal benefits. It's a dude who's overlooked, who has a big season and can translate that into something different. And Parker, he's here. What do you think about him?
Yeah. For me, going into this portal season, and this might be me getting distracted by, shiny skill position player, but running back was the biggest position need. You're losing Schrader and Pete, obviously. In the SEC, you need at least 2, high caliber backs to really survive. You've got the freshman there, but you needed someone more experienced to step in that season. Carroll's a guy, as you mentioned, got better every single year he's been in college at Georgia State. Overlooked out of, I believe it was Union City, Georgia, kind of a local prospect out of there. Went to Georgia State, treaded water the first couple of years, but then this Georgia State team, and I'll try to kind of keep personal, affinity aside, but early in the season, I was in love with this Georgia State team. He and Darren Granger in that backfield were dynamite. Read option was just a killer with those two because they were both just athletic freaks that in the open field were impossible to tackle. They faded at the end of the season, lost 5 games in a row. Some tough sledding, but even then, Carroll had, I believe it was 208 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a loss to Georgia Southern. He wasn't falling off. The team just was. So, I think, as you said, Cody Schrader, in terms of stature, he's got more burst overall. I'd say is something you're going to notice. I think on the film, and fans will more than likely notice next season for sure. I think that's the big benefit. He's built like a rock. I think he already looks like an SEC running back. He's experienced as well. He's been in college programs for 4 years. He's already got that build. So he's got that you trust. I don't know if, again, you have to see, you're more than likely looking to pick up another running back later in the portal cycle or one of Jamal Roberts, DeVorce Jones to really step up and be that secondary guy that can take the load off of him. Because I don't know if Carroll's going to be, the Cody Schrader 20 plus carries a game back that's able to give you that same production in his first season in the SEC. We'll have to see. I think he's capable of it. I just don't know if I see it happening. You're going to need, I'm thinking he'll be more around 15 to 20 touches overall a game, and that would be a good number for him. But yeah, versatile. He's shown that he can catch out of the backfield, 234 receiving yards as well. So he can work within the offense. And I think at Georgia State, a little bit, I don't believe as much stretch zone. Obviously, it was what Mizzou's going to run, but a lot of out of shotgun, not much out of center. They're running fairly up tempo, kind of high powered offense over there. So we should fit right in with what Kirby Moore is going to overall be trying to do. So, I mean, huge addition, exactly kind of one of the big names out there that you would have wanted. And as you pointed out, one of those group of 5 guys that went under the radar that seems poised to kind of take a big leap forward at the Power 5 level. So the only thing I will say is coming to the SEC as a running back, it's a rude awakening. It is tough. And I think he'll probably have some moments where that happens. He's not going to be dynamite every game, but this is a huge addition. And I do think he's going to be very productive. And I think he could, not quite the same numbers as Cody had, but I think 1,000+ yards is certainly within the realm of possibility.
Yeah. Not everybody has the endurance of Mr. Schrader, and nobody, it's rare. That's why he is who he is. When you watch Marcus Carroll play, the things that I like was, number one, he is a cut and go guy. Like we've seen the difference in running back styles with Cody Schrader and Nathaniel Pete. I love Pete. He's from my hometown. He played for my school. I wanted him to do well. He did not really do well in a zone blocking scheme. He needs the offensive lineman to engage and stay engaged and then let him create in the backfield. And that's not really what the Drinkwitz scheme, the Moore scheme does. Cody Schrader's ability to read and hit and go, that was what the big difference was. That's why Pete always got hit in the backfield and Schrader was always running forward for at least a yard. Same thing with Marcus Carroll. Now, all I can really do is watch his highlights. Like, I can't go back and watch every single game. So obviously highlights are quite a bit different than the time that he does get smacked for a loss of 2. But when you watch him on his highlights, he is decisive. He takes the ball, he goes, he sees the hole and hits it. There's not a lot of dancing. There's not a lot of hesitancy. He knows where he needs to go and he knows how to get there. That is good. He has also got a tendency of falling forward. I understand that Sun Belt defenders are not SEC defenders. You don't need to tell me that. However, the fact that he's already got that practice and he's got the ability to churn, to grind, to fall forward, that's a good thing. I know that he probably can't do what Cody Schrader did as far as like workload goes, but we also know that's how this offense works. They find their guy and they let him go. And this past year, Carroll had a downright Drinkwitzian 239 carry lead over the next guy at Georgia State. Now, I know the quarterback ran it, but like the backup running back only had 35 carries on the year, whereas Carroll was sitting there with 274. So he is used to just being the only guy. These are all good things. Now, to your point, he's probably doesn't have the endurance that Cody Schrader has. Now, obviously, Coach Loop has got to get his hands on him. The strength and training staff is going to get their hands on him. They apparently do magical wonders with these guys. I don't know what it is, but like that can change, but we don't know that he can be the guy for 22 carries a game and just be the only one that gets the ball. We don't know that. I know that there has been some speculation on, well, maybe the offensive line at Georgia State isn't very good. Maybe Missouri's is a lot better, which it's fair. Obviously, the caliber of player is going to be different. You play at the Sun Belt for a reason. You play in the SEC for a reason. But I ran through the offensive line stats, and Georgia State's offensive line was actually better than Missouri's in a couple of key areas. Number one, blown blocks. They did not do that. They were very sound in their blocking. And number two, they actually kept the defense out of the backfield a little bit better than Missouri did. Now, Missouri's offensive line was better at opening 4-yard holes. They were better in short yardage, got to get it situations. Like, the rushing offense just performed better than Georgia State's. I get all that, but it's not like Marcus Carroll was having to Barry Sanders his way behind the Detroit Lions offensive line in the 90s. Like, he had a decent line in front of him going against Sun Belt competition. So I don't think he's going to see, oh, wow, my line is so much better now. I don't think you're really going to see that, barring some potential upgrades. We'll talk about that later. So that is also a demerit to him. It's not like he's going to be, he was at a deficit, an offensive line deficit, and now he'll be operating it with a deficit positive. We don't know that. But again, I said it at the beginning of my recruiting reset. I still don't know. Like I vacillate between the Drinkwitz scheme makes any running back look good versus Drinkwitz has a really good way of finding NFL caliber dudes. Whatever the answer is a good thing, mind you, but I just don't know which one it is. And if it's scheme-based, I'm not worried about Carroll. If it's player-based, then he needs to show us something before we can actually just write him off and say, yeah, he's going to be fine.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, at this point it is, the talent that he has. It's just how will that translate to the SEC level and game in, game out being able to be that productive. Because I mean, as we said, you talked about not having the endurance of Schrader. I mean, if I had a nickel for every time Drinkwitz came to a press conference this season and said, I don't think Cody's going to go this week, he's probably doubtful. And then Cody's warming up on Saturday looking like he's 100%. I mean, I believe it was calf strain most of the year, but also he probably had multiple just nicks and bruises that nobody was talking about. You're hard pressed to find any guy in the country that's able to still play in pretty much every single game and take all that. So we'll see if Carroll's up to that task. But yeah, I mean, the point, Georgia State was offensively a high caliber team this year. It faded a little bit later, but that offensive line was really strong. I will say, to be devil's advocate, in the one game that he probably went against the outside of, they had LSU this year at some point, correct? Yeah, they had LSU. He went for 87 yards and a touchdown, 4 receptions, 51 yards. Great performance. You could argue a better defense than James Madison he played against. 13 carries, 33 yards, but 3 catches for 30 yards. So that's probably the best defensive front against last year. Probably the most like what he's going to see in the SEC. LSU's was good, not great. James Madison probably on a similar level. That aside, that's just kind of the sample size you're going off of. But full off season, SEC strength and conditioning, getting used to this Kirby Moore offense, that can certainly change, and he could certainly do different things. So huge win, I would say. I'm interested to see. You pointed out how Kirby Moore in this offense likes to find their guy. I wonder if Carroll is capable, because you're looking at Burden coming back. Obviously, will be one of them. Theo Weiss could potentially be another if he comes back. But you need a third piece in this offense, whether it be a third receiver stepping up and you go very pass heavy and being that star that you utilize a lot, or you need that running back to step up. I'm interested to see if they can figure that out over the off season, or if they really need. I'll refrain from saying that. You can't figure that just out over the off season, but you can get a sense, I think, of if he's going to be able to be that guy for you over the off season, and you'll probably see in the first couple of weeks with his usage what the coaching staff truly thinks. But talent is there, the speed is there. I think he's going to be an explosive back. He's going to rip off a couple big runs next year. I think that your point on him being a cut and go guy is one of the best attributes to have as a running back in this offense, if not the best. So I'm eager to see. He was a guy I was eyeing when he entered the portal. I thought Mizzou would hopefully pursue him, and they definitely did and landed him. So big stuff. And it was pretty quick. It's quick work Drinkwitz and I've been doing. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, Pride entered, and it was a couple days later, I believe, Mizzou was already on him. He already, had been in contact. They're working fast. They're finding their guys, and they might be, really keying in on them, and maybe I won't say being too kind of, concise with what they're doing, because I don't think that's the case, but they are really going in on guys and then landing the ones that they want.
Yeah. I mean, you said it last show. They have to be particular because they know that there's guys coming back. So I think they have targeted the guys that they want and have been proactive in reaching out. Let me put it that way. I think there might be some coaches out there who call that tampering, which eat it, nerds. You do the same thing. I don't want to hear about it. Okay. Yeah, I'm not too concerned about that aspect. Also, there is no such thing as tampering because this is college football. If they know who they want and they're going after them and it's a quick deal, then yeah, absolutely. This has been an extended conversation, and we're not going to go down this too far because there's really nothing to report. But obviously, we know this morning, Caden Green, the standout Oklahoma freshman offensive lineman who's from Lee Summit North, he entered the portal, and it took the Oklahoma staff completely by surprise. Kid from Missouri, who's a position of need, who enters the portal out of nowhere.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, wonder what that could be. And of course, Armand Mimbu, who played with Caden Green and Lee Summit North, responded with a smiley face emoji. So, I don't know. That'd be a great addition. Nothing to report there, though. I think getting back to Marcus Carroll, getting back to the running backs, I think we are going to get a better idea of how this staff views Marcus Carroll by their portal activity going forward. Rocket Sanders is going to go to South Carolina. It sounds like Trevor Etienne is going to be going to Georgia, which is hilarious. We don't have a lot of other big flashy names. So it depends on A, if they go after another running back, and B, where is that running back coming from? If they find a guy where you're like, he was buried on the depth charts, maybe you're saying, okay, they probably think Carroll's the guy or they think the freshman can step up. One of those two. If they go and get another flashy guy, another, starter at the P5 level or a standout G5 guy, then maybe they are saying, hey, Carroll's great. We want to make sure that we have enough dudes to throw at this next season. I think you can read a lot into what they think by what they do. That's something that BK has always harped on. Don't listen to what they say, follow what they do. So we'll track their portal activity with regards to running back. That's going to tell us a lot. So far, we haven't seen any others that they've really reached out to. That can change as names enter the portal, but right now, not so much. So worth checking on. Okay, so that's the portal activity. And again, there's rumors and stuff, and we're not really going to get into that. That's not really our jam. We did have another event happen today because everything happens in December in college football. There's no breath to be taken. New schedule. Because as of July 1st of 2024, Oklahoma and Texas are going to be SEC. Mm-hmm. So that shakes up everything. There are no longer divisions in the SEC. There are no more East and West. We blow that stuff up. I don't know if there's actual pods. I don't know if there's teams that they're going to be playing more often than not, but we do have a bona fide 2024 Missouri college football schedule that dropped at 6:00 in a 2-hour show for some reason, because everything's got to be sold for advertising. That's welcome to 2023. Anyway, let's review it real quick. So Missouri is going to open the 2024 season at home on August 31st against Murray State. Now, just as an FYI, this podcast, or 50% of this podcast, a staunch believer that Murray is not a state and will continue to stand in their way of statehood as long as I live. Parker, I don't know where you fall on that. Doesn't really matter. They follow that up on September 7th with Buffalo, the first time that Missouri will be playing Buffalo since 2008, when the Bulls, led by future Kansas head coach, scared the hell out of one of the better Missouri teams of the past 25 years, thanks to a bunch of turnovers. But Missouri did pull it off, so that'll be an interesting one. Then we get to avenge that weird overtime loss in Massachusetts when Boston College comes to Mizzou on September 14th. And then this is a season, you get these like once every 4 or 5 years, that has 2 bye weeks. It's just because of the calendar. So the 2 bye weeks actually separate the season into 3 4-game sets. And the conclusion of the first 4-game set is Vanderbilt. So Parker, just to review, Murray's not a state, Buffalo, Boston College, Vanderbilt, all at home. What are your thoughts?
The second straight season of you're looking at being unbeaten through 5 weeks of play, and that's shiny, and you're thinking, oh, this could be great, getting that early season momentum, because something at least that personally I saw from watching this team over the past couple of years is under Drinkwitz, they could never really, even someone 2020 could never really get that early season momentum that kind of propelled them into a stronger end of the season. They always had to kind of rally and pull some stuff off and really grit their way to it. Past year they did that, and you saw what happened. This schedule presents a really likely chance for that. You can't see Vanderbilt really improving all that much with all that they've lost to the portal, and I don't think they're not going to bring in enough to really see an uptick in wins. Boston College, you had such an up and down season under Jeff Hafley, who was on the hot seat, then was looking like one of the best coaches in the ACC, then back on somewhat of a hot seat. So who knows what's really going on there. Buffalo's been struggling in the MAC as of late. You're not looking at them as too much of a threat, but again, as you pointed out, oh wait, it did happen. They could certainly walk in there, give them a scare. Murray State is Murray State. I think, the South Dakota game this year, I think was a much stronger FCS opponent that you took on and beat mostly handily outside of a rough second half. So you're not too concerned there. Yeah, looking at that 4-0, very attainable. I think you don't get truly tested through this, more than likely. Who knows? Boston College, Vanderbilt could be world beaters. Who knows? But more than likely not. You're not going to get that first true test until after that bye week. But great to warm things up. the thing is, you're not really figuring. There's going to be, yes, you're always going to be figuring out certain position battles, and those first 4 weeks present a great opportunity for that. But there's nothing to, quarterbacks decided, but, assuming all these guys come back, wide receiver is going to be set in stone. Defense, for the most part, is going to be set. You're going to be looking at offensive line and probably running back to an extent. These first couple weeks is kind of how that's going to shake out. But, I mean, realistically, the expectations, I think one thing, and probably talk about this the whole offseason, but how this team is going to handle not being the hunter, but being the hunted is going to be huge. I think you're going to see in those first 4 games. Are they coming out focused and locked in with a target on their back, or are they going to kind of sleepwalk their way through these first couple of games? I think that'll be a big thing to see, but very favorable for early season momentum and getting the fan base really into this team. Got 4 home games where you could really put forth good performances, blow a couple people out. The fans are really loving this team, and then you go forward from there.
Yeah. Cakey as hell. I'll say it now. I don't care what happens to this roster in the offseason. I don't care what assistants leave. I don't care what injuries happen in fall camp. You got to be 4-0 at the end of that first 4 weeks. You just have to. So heading into that bye week. So the bye week hits September 28th. That's the cakey part of the schedule to get it all out there first. Missouri does not leave the state of Missouri to play college football until October 5th, when they go to College Station and play Texas A&M. A new head man, Mike Elko, fresh off of Duke, is running at Duke. So he's been making some great hires, and obviously that Texas A&M roster is one of the most talented in the country. I don't care what their record is. They need a football coach to coach them. If someone can do that and can harness that talent, they're going to be a tough out, assuming everyone sticks around and they can continue to recruit at the levels that they do. So that's your first test, October 5th on the road, Texas A&M. Follow that up. October 12th, this isn't going to happen, but I'm going to read it off anyway. Missouri goes to Amherst, Massachusetts to play UMass, the Minutemen.
Sure.
That's what they say. And then October 19th, come back home, you play Auburn in Columbia. And then the very next week, you turn around and go on October 26th to Alabama before you hit a bye week. And that is your second 4-game stretch. Parker, talk me through it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think this is where you find out how good this 24 team will be. I think A&M, you're going to see a lot of people writing them off because of these past couple of years under Jimbo. Your point about them being talented, regardless of the transfer portal losses, they still are. And I think the early signs you're hearing out of CSTAT with Elko is that Jimbo ran a very loose ship, let his guys get away with a lot. There was not a lot of discipline. Elko has been the exact opposite so far, and I think that's going to pay dividends on the field, especially next year. They might not see a crazy increase in wins, but I think A&M is going to look like a far better team. They need to figure out the quarterback, etc. I think they'll do that regardless. Playing at Cal Field, no matter how bad the team is still incredibly difficult. Passing that test would be incredible. I think you're still, again, full offseason ahead of us, but on paper, you're going to be a better team than them. But that's not going to matter when you're in front of 102,000 plus, whatever it may be at Kyle Field. So it'll be tough, winnable, but very tough, I think. And then you turn around, again, UMass, see if it ends up happening. But if it does, you turn around and then you go play in a sleepy, Amherst environment that is just going to be so opposite what you just experienced. And interested to see how a team could possibly handle coming off an environmental high like that to a low. Who knows how that would work out? But it could also just be a nice tune-up game following an A&M game that, regardless, you're going to learn a lot about yourself, and probably even if you win, won't be the prettiest game because that's your first true test of the season. They generally aren't the prettiest. So you'll see. Could work out iron out some wrinkles there. Auburn at home. I think Auburn, also another team that's going to be much improved under Hugh Freeze. I think it's going to be another game that Mizzou on paper should win. I think home crowd will do big favors for them there. It was also announced that it was homecoming as well, which always seems to play somewhat of a factor along with that. So should be a big game. It's the only home game out of that 4-game stretch, though, which is very interesting. And then you take on the second part of the state of Alabama, the bigger part of the state of Alabama. Let's be honest, at their place. It's Tuscaloosa. It's Bryant-Denny Stadium. It's tough to win at. And now the one point you will say is Alabama will be coming off a trip to Knoxville the previous week. potentially they're battered and bruised from that game. It took a lot out. Who knows? I mean, that's reaching for straws probably, but I mean, Mizzou could walk in there and compete. We'll see. Jalen Milroe is going to be an early Heisman favorite. We'll see how much improved he is next season. That's looking very far ahead. But I mean, overall, I think getting out of that stretch 3-1 would be phenomenal. I think that's a great goal to come away with. More than likely you're looking at the loss being to Bama, that A&M game being the big swing game. But still, I think it's a great midseason test. And I think I love how the bye weeks are placed this season. I wasn't a huge fan of the bye week being late in this 2023 season, but it worked out. They grinded their way to that late bye week, and it was fairly rewarding. This season, you got two nice breaks that are kind of at good junctures of the season. So I think you're still going to face the SEC attrition, obviously, but you're going to be more well-rested than I think a lot of other SEC teams, especially considering your bye week comes before that A&M game. And then your bye week after the Bama game comes before potentially your biggest home game of the season, more than likely.
Yeah. I do not see a world where that UMass game stays as is. Desiree Reed-Francois is too much of a gangster to watch her team go to A&M and then to Amherst. Like that, no. She'll buy him out and replace him with somebody else, or drag him back to the Dome or something. She's going to do something smart.
And UMass plays 3 SEC teams. They have Mizzou, Georgia, and then I believe Mississippi State as well. The other two, obviously, at the SEC venues. So
they're so broke. They're so broke.
Yeah,
my God.
I don't know. I mean, not to get too off base, but them going back down to the FCS or back to the FCS might not be the worst idea in the world for their. Idaho made it work, and they're loving life right now.
Yeah. I mean, you can't always be Idaho, but I mean, and even Idaho had a rough re-entry to the FCS, but yeah, they've gotten it back together.
Good old TV Dome.
Yeah, God, I love that place. I love watching a guy catch a touchdown pass next to like a door that opens outside. Like, just weirdest venue. I love it. Anyway, so that is your second 4-game stretch. For me, 1 and 3. Like, just get out of 5 and 3, and then you get the home stretch here because your bye week is on November 2nd, and then you get, to your point, the biggest home game of a while, Oklahoma. These Sooners finally come back to Columbia for the first time since 2010. We all remember how that one went. Follow that up with a road trip on the 16th to South Carolina. Follow that up with another road trip to Mississippi State, a team that Missouri has not beaten since they've joined the SEC, randomly enough. I think you close it out. This says the 30th, but we all know it's going to be the 28th. Black Friday, Arkansas, and Columbia. And that is your back 4. Parker, we know the obvious one. Oklahoma's a big game. But other than that, how do you feel about the backstretch here?
I more looked at, I think the first thing that jumped off the page to me was that UMass was standing, and it might be was standing in the end. Your only back-to-back road games of the season come following this Oklahoma game. I think you look at the potential for, again, this is just massive speculation, but if you pull off that Oklahoma upset, riding super high, maybe trying to make some form of a late season playoff push, you have those 2 road games against teams that are going to be looking to pull off signature wins late in the season. They're probably going to be middling around bowl eligibility, maybe a little bit lower than that. But South Carolina and Mississippi State are still, Carolina trying to get revenge for Mizzou's recent domination. You pointed out Mississippi State hasn't lost to Mizzou yet. I do see somewhat concern in just if you do pull off that Oklahoma game, or even if you don't, and then having to face those 2 games on the road, especially with Arkansas, you got that rivalry looming at the end of the season. You can't be looking too ahead to that. So those 2 games will be very interesting, I think. I mean, again, on paper should win, but will be interesting to see. Again, I mean, Mississippi State, South Carolina losing Spencer Rattler, Mississippi State losing their head coach. They've got a lot they're going through as well. But obviously Arkansas at the end of the season, talk about question marks for a program. Sam Pittman himself after the Mizzou game didn't even know what to say. I'm still not, I don't know, Mizzou fans might not like to hear this. I think Sam Pittman is still a good coach. I think he can turn things around. I'm not going to guarantee that because I really can see it. The gauntlet that Arkansas runs this season. I mean, they do it every year, but they run a gauntlet this year with this new look SEC. And I don't know. He might not be on the sidelines by the time that Mizzou game rolls around. Who knows? So we'll see. But again, it's rivalry game. Stuff can happen. It always can happen. So we'll have to see. But I think, again, 3-1 in that closing stretch, 4-0 is the ideal scenario. But just accounting for an upset loss on the road, or Oklahoma just proving to be too good, and Columbia 3-1 is probably realistically what you're looking at the end.
It's God. You get Oklahoma is looking for a new quarterback. South Carolina, who's just continues to be South Carolina, and we don't even know what that means. Mississippi State, brand new coach. Arkansas fighting for their coach. There's so many variables. And I know it's easy to say when we haven't even finished the current season. So like it doesn't matter what we think now, but that's a doozy. That's a doozy of a close. Thank God the first four are so easy because it is tough. Every other stretch after that, which, you know, that's part of it. I have not looked at the other SEC schedules, but it's very balanced. It's a lot. The feedback that I have seen is like, wow, this is everyone's got a very similar schedule. And I can't back that up. Like I said, I didn't look at it, but that's the chatter that I have seen, and that's part of it. When you break up the West and the East, and you put the chocolate and the peanut butter together, like it's a nice blend. It makes it tougher for some teams and easier for others, but I don't know, man. This just goes back to schedule easy in the non-con. And I know the ghost of BK is shaking his fist and telling me that I'm stupid and I should have my team tested week in and week out. But man, like you only get 3 non-conference games, right? Or 4, I guess. But like, it's not going to be any easier with Texas and Oklahoma being here. It's not going to be any easier when you don't play Vanderbilt every single year. When you don't get assuming you don't get South Carolina every single year, like that's tough. That's real tough. You don't get to play Florida, which, rebuilding, and they took us to the limit anyway, but it's just going to be a different beast, and you got to get the wins when you can get them. I think the first 4 games you got it. And then from here on out, it's show that you belong, show that something to prove that you can do it again, because it's not going to be easy. And it's great to play Oklahoma again. It's great to see some teams from the West, but it's never a great day to see Alabama on the schedule. You know what I mean?
That's scary, but and your point of the non-conference. I mean, because you compare it to a team like Florida next year, who plays obviously Florida State, but then UCF and Miami. I mean, they don't have a break.
Oh,
they don't get a break in their schedule next year, really, for Florida. So yeah, I mean, with this new look SEC, I mean, schedule some Power 5. I mean, middling to slightly higher tier team, but I can't see the benefit now in scheduling tough non-conference when you're going to be playing 3 to 4 top 15 and 20 teams each season, pretty much guaranteed. So yeah, but I agree. I think the SEC schedules, looking at them, were very balanced. One other note I did want to point out about Mizzou's schedule, not to just regurgitate what I wrote about, but in terms of who teams are playing prior to when they play Mizzou, just because this is always kind of a nitpicky thing people like to look at. Auburn and Mississippi State will both be coming off bye weeks. Mississippi State coming off a very late season bye week for them before they play Mizzou. On a very semi-related note, Oklahoma will host Maine before they play Missouri, while Arkansas will host Louisiana Tech before they play Missouri. So,
oh boy,
they also have essential bye weeks with that. But other rest of the schedule, Carolina plays Vanderbilt the week before. I already mentioned Bama plays Tennessee. A&M has the Southwest Classic against Arkansas the week before they meet up with Mizzou in College Station. So there's kind of what your other opponents will be be facing the weeks before. Again, sometimes it has 0 impact, sometimes it has a lot. Bye weeks can be hit or miss. Sometimes teams come out bye weeks a little slow and, not really kind of a well-oiled machine like a team that's been, winning a couple games straight, but we'll see. But yeah, overall schedule compared to other SEC teams, while it is balanced overall, Mizzou has one of the lighter slates. But you're playing at Alabama. So, I mean, there's that wrench kind of thrown in there regardless, where you're looking at, is 12-0 possible? Man, it certainly is, but it's Bama. And it's also, you're looking at when you play Bama and you look at how this Bama team progressed this season, you get them a little bit later in the year. Based on recency, you'd like to get them earlier. I think Bama's going to really hit their stride, especially with Milroe coming back at quarterback. You're going to be looking at a pretty well-oiled Alabama team by that point. So we'll see. But I do like the schedule overall, though. I like the easier lead in, and then coming out of that bye week and tested right out, I think is a good setup.
We'll get you out on this one. Looking at this schedule now and knowing everything that you only know now, Missouri finishes next year with a record of...
I should have expected this. I'm going to go... Man, I want to say 10-2, but I'm going to say 9-3. I can't go. And I'm going 9-3 with a loss to A&M, Bama, and I'm thinking you beat Oklahoma, but you lose one of those road games to Carolina or Mississippi State, or maybe even Auburn gets you in Columbia. I think there's a weird loss in there that prevents them from getting back to 10. I think coming off the bye week and the high run of the Oklahoma game, I do think they get the Sooners. I do think they win that game.
All right, write it down.
Are you going to give one, or am I the only one?
No, you're the only one. Haha, you fool. You silly fool. How dare you fall into my trap of coming onto my show? Yeah, I'm not. No, absolutely not. Not yet. I will eventually, but not today. That's going to be the show for today. As always, we appreciate the downloads and the subscriptions. I'm closing it out. Stop talking. Leave a comment or rate us. We love all types of feedback from you all. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Nate G. Edwards. He's at Gillam_Parker. And of course, you can follow the Rockin' flagship at Rockin' Nation and our podcasting outlet at Rockin' Radio. We appreciate you tuning in this time. We'll try to do better next time. And until then, MIZ.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, just click the subscribe button below. And you can find this podcast through the Apple Podcast app or for iPhone, or the Google Podcast app for Android, or whatever app you use to listen to your podcast. We are also available on Spotify. Just search for Rock M Radio. And if you like other sports, Fans First Sports Network is a podcast network that has coverage of all other teams, Major League Baseball, MLS, NFL, whatever you want to listen and read about. It is a great network full of really fantastic podcasts. So look them up and subscribe to any and all of those podcasts. Rock M Radio will be back with more episodes coming soon. Thanks.